Welcome to Charts Today. My name is David Linton, and today's edition for Tuesday, the 27th of October, comes to you from London. And the markets were hit quite hard yesterday. We saw the S&P down in the US down by nearly 2%, Dow down by more than that, and pretty much we're seeing stocks selling off across the board, as well as crude falling very heavily yesterday. So we'll take a look at that. Remembering I look at my weekly, daily, and 60-minute charts, my long-term, medium-term, and short-term view of the market with a corresponding point and figure target. So the dollar is holding up. It's just been gradually increasing the last few days, increasingly looking like we bottomed in September, but we are still bearish on the medium and long-term charts with downside targets. So it's too early to say that the dollar is in long-term recovery, but it might well have bottomed. The euro actually just falling a little bit against the dollar. That August September high, we just haven't got anywhere near that, and that might well be a top. Conversely, sterling sitting at 130 this morning against the US dollar, pretty static around this level the last few days, and against the euro sitting at 110, holding on to its position there as well. Bitcoin holding the $13,000 level, so that's looking stronger and stronger as we start to make multi-year highs. As we mentioned, the markets in the US fell heavily yesterday. The S&P 500 index now clearly in bearish territory, sinking lower below the cloud, and it will be interesting to see what happens on the daily chart. Inevitably, the 60-minute chart will crack first. The shorter trend turns bearish before the medium-term one does, before the long-term one does. But we still do have these targets hanging over us. The Nasdaq target, some 22% lower, and again, clearly bearish below the clouds. So a degree of caution needs to be exercised. The Dow was down 2.3%, and so that was quite a big fall yesterday and didn't really recover. And more importantly, the futures this morning, the S&P futures up 0.1% and the Nasdaq E-mini up 0.2%. These are very weak performances for markets that have fallen over 2%. So we are just seeing a real dead cat bounce there. The VIX volatility is up this morning. It's above this 30 level. We've been saying that 30 is the critical level. This is the fear index, and we're starting to see now on the VIX a move above the daily cloud, and that hasn't happened for quite some time. We moved above the daily cloud when the crisis hit in February, March, and we've been bearish ever since, but now we are coming back into that territory. So that is probably the biggest change, really, is that the VIX volatility, the fear index, is now starting to get some momentum. The FTSE future down 0.25%. The cash market in Germany down 0.8%. Germany had a terrible day yesterday on those SAP results, SAP falling over 20% on the day, and that's really pushed the market into medium-term bearish territory. This is leading the US into there, by the way, so that's significant. The CAC 40 is also in that medium-term bearish territory, never got anywhere near making new highs, and if we look at Japan, it was slightly lower, but again, it hasn't really performed for the last few years. And the Hang Seng has been a really bad performer, although the last week or so it's actually looked a lot better. In China, we're up 0.1%, and in India, we're up 0.9%. So these Asian markets bucking the trend, but the Aussie market followed, down 1.7%. Looking at gold, we're just clinging on to $1,900 this morning. Not enough to put us into short-term bullish territory, but gold is still looking pretty strong, and of course there are a lot of gold bulls around with a crisis at the moment. Silver also looking lower, and US 10-year yields falling back quite significantly, falling back to 0.8%. We were nudging 0.9% just a few days ago, so we've really come back there. Taking a look now at the energy mix, we've got Brent crude up this morning by about 0.3%, given it fell 3% yesterday. This is not much of a recovery to speak of. Clearly bearish. We went to clients bearish this week on Brent crude, and WTI much the same, of course. The key thing on these markets is to watch these levels. So if we make a lower low below this 39 level for Brent, that will be quite significant, and we can actually just put the key levels on there. We can see this is really what we have to hold. We have to hold 40. Break above 43.50 would be bullish. A break below 38.80 would be bearish. We put those levels on there, so that's quite key. This new feature and update just hit the K key. we're seeing US nat gas looking stronger. We've got targets to 334, 333, 311 and 314. So that's the one area that is looking pretty strong for the moment. So that's quite key. Bob, gasoline, we are seeing lower, and again, these key levels there are quite significant. Coal is down 1/3% this morning. Emissions falling further to 2367. So that's really quite key that we're starting to come back and test this level. This level that we saw just nudging 2320. We do need to hold that, otherwise we're going lower and we're just activating further downside targets. This one of 20 has been hanging over us for some time. Gas prices fell yesterday along with oil prices, but the chart's still looking spectacular. MBP, TTF did fall away quite heavily yesterday, and that's certainly showing up in the 60-minute chart, but we are still in bullish mode, and winter gas did have sharp falls yesterday as well. Gas pool was down very significantly as well, down 5%, so we're seeing quite big falls there. German power sitting at 38.60, and again, if we break this 38.10 level, that's really bad. We have got multiple downside targets, so that's quite key. And if we look at the quarterly contract, we're also nudging the bottom here, so that's just a sign of the weakness in power markets. French power is up slightly this morning. We haven't really got a proper paint yet, but it is looking pretty bearish, as is Dutch power, of course, following German power. Nordic power down quite sharply, making new lows, so that's really worrying for Nordic power. And we see on the quarterly chart we're also making new lows, so really just looking to that July low is going to be quite key. Czech power also falling away as you would expect with German power, and last of all UK power actually just holding up okay, but of course you really need the OTC pricing there to see what's happening with UK power. So that's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. Keep an eye on that oil price. Until then, bye for now.